You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Helene reaches hurricane status ahead of landfall along the Gulf Coast. We will take you live to Panama City with how residents are preparing for what's expected to be among Florida's worst.
All of the failures could have been prevented, and there needs to be accountability.
Stunning revelations in what went wrong when Secret Service agents failed to adequately protect a former president. Inside the Senate's latest report. And the price of a popular breakfast food is skyrocketing. How much more expensive eggs have become and what analysts say might bring costs down. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, Hurricane Helene over the Gulf of Mexico, headed towards Florida. Devastating hurricane force winds expected across northern Florida and also southern Georgia with landfall for tomorrow evening. On top of the heavy winds, the heavy rainfall over the next few days makes the chance of flash flooding much more likely. The National Weather Service says there is at least a 70% chance of a flash flood over the next 3 days around Tallahassee and north of Atlanta into West North Carolina. But let's go live right now to Panama City, where Megan Scarano has a look into how the residents there are preparing for the storm. Megan?
Yes, cloud cover has increased throughout the day here in Panama City Beach, Florida. Red flags are also flying, which means people should really not be in the water here. But even with the threat of Helene, some people are enjoying their day at the beach, while others aren't taking any chances.
There's a lot of work to be done to make sure that we're fully prepared for the hurricane.
At this oceanfront restaurant in Panama City Beach, Florida, they're not wasting any time as Helene closes in.
It's a huge investment and a great part of the atmosphere that we provide here. The big bay windows offer a great view of the ocean right across the street, so we want to protect that as much as possible.
Outdoor furniture will be brought in and sandbags put down closer to Helene's landfall. Wednesday, they're focused on storm panels. It's time consuming.
They actually are inserted one by one. They are bolted at the bottom and then inserted into a track at the top. So it's actually about 15 to 20 pieces that are interlocked together.
But it's a necessity.
People work hard for what it is that they have, and trying to be able to replace those things, it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. It sets people back a few years.
Down on the beach, one family is taking one last dip before ending their vacation early.
It's headed right up for Atlanta, so we wanted to get a head start so that we're not following it or in it before we get up there. Then we'll have to deal with all the torrential rain up in Atlanta.
While others plan to ride out the storm from their 11th floor hotel room.
My mom prayed before I came here, and I always rely on my mom's prayer.
And of course, we know it's not just businesses and tourists who are impacted by hurricanes that make landfall. Residents are also impacted as well. That's why the city of Panama City Beach, Florida has handed out 10 free sandbags to all their residents here. Live in Panama City Beach, Florida, Megan Scarano, ABC 3340 News.
And Megan, really quickly, we know that these folks in Panama City are not in the mandated evacuation zone. So what is your sense of what they're doing in terms of preparation? Do you know of people that have maybe voluntarily left the area, or do the vast majority of people there seem to want to ride the storm out?
Yeah, well, you heard that family who was here on vacation for fall break. They were planning to stay throughout the rest of the weekend. They'd end their vacation early. I've also talked to people who are hunkering down and riding out the storm, hoping for some better weather by the weekend. Not yet hearing of any residents who are evacuating, just a lot of people putting out those sandbags and hoping for the best.
We are all hoping for the best, that's for sure. Megan Scarano live in Panama City for us. Thank you for that live report. And tonight, at least 2 injured after an explosive device went off today at a courthouse in Santa Maria, California. The injuries do not seem to be life-threatening at this time. One individual, an adult male, is in custody related to that blast. An eyewitness says multiple police officers tackled the suspect after he threw a bag that detonated right in front of the building. Police do not believe there are other suspects or bombs, but the investigation is ongoing. About 210 houses remain evacuated in Whitewater Township, right outside of Cincinnati. Officials say a rail car was leaking styrene, which can cause headaches, nausea, or respiratory illnesses. In addition to homes being evacuated, Three Rivers schools and a nearby Kroger also were evacuated. That leak has been stopped, but officials say this will likely last a few days while air quality tests are conducted, and some residents were able to go home to collect a few items.
I change the clothes basically, the essentials, my medication, our daughter's dogs, things that they wouldn't let us get in the beginning.
The shelter-in-place order is lifted in Frisco, Texas. Earlier this morning, residents were confined to their homes and businesses as firefighters battled a chemical fire at a pool chemical supply warehouse. At around 10 in the morning, the fire was extinguished. Officials did not detect any harmful air readings throughout the morning. A third house in just 4 days has collapsed on the North Carolina coast, and you can see it right there. Dramatic video, and Cape Hatteras National Seashore Rangers responding yesterday to reports of a house in Rodanthe just completely falling over, and no one, thankfully, was in that home at the time. It comes as around 2 miles of beach have been temporarily closed because of dangerous debris. The National Park Service warning people to avoid the water and wear hard-soled shoes. Yes, a terrifying ordeal in Los Angeles. One person dead after a city bus was hijacked overnight. Police say a passenger was shot and killed by that hijacker, who also held the driver at gunpoint on the bus in southern LA, leading to a pursuit into downtown for more than an hour. The driver activated a panic button, and police ultimately stopped the vehicle with tire puncturing spike strips. The driver and another passenger were rescued from the bus, while the suspect was taken into custody. The alleged gunman's motive remains unclear tonight, as does the identity of the passenger killed. The incident does come as more discussions in LA center around transportation safety, with a troubling pattern of violence plaguing bus operators. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the United Nations General Assembly with an urgent message. Don't forget about us. Zelenskyy is facing growing pressure from Western allies to negotiate a ceasefire. Zelenskyy says peace talks at this point would just result in ceding territory to Russia, but he can't force Russia into peace without the help of Ukraine's allies.
I want peace for my people, real peace and just peace. And I'm asking for your support from all nations of the world. We do not divide the world. I ask the same of you, do not divide the world.
And tonight, concerns about an all-out war developing in the Middle East as U.S. officials work behind the scenes to secure a temporary ceasefire, a bid to calm the escalating conflict that has killed more than 600 people in Lebanon, including women and children, and injured more than 1,000 others. This as Israel vows to step up its offensive against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah continues launching rockets into Israel that are overwhelmingly intercepted. It's unclear if common ground can be found to reach a temporary truce, with the war in Gaza still raging on. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us now with a look at where the widening conflict stands.
Israel's Iron Dome kicking into action early Wednesday morning, intercepting incoming rocket fire from Hezbollah, including a ballistic missile aimed at Tel Aviv, the furthest attempted strike yet by the Iranian-backed terror organization.
Israel faces a legitimate threat from a terrorist group backed by Iran right across the border.
Israel continuing its bombardment of southern Lebanon, the Israeli military confirming they hit more than 280 Hezbollah targets Wednesday. Lebanese officials say the death toll from recent airstrikes surpassed 600. Women and children are among the casualties. We pressed IDF Lieutenant Colonel Dotan Razili on the issue last week when visiting the Lebanon border as part of a delegation organized by the American Middle East Press Association, a private nonprofit. Tell me about your efforts to protect civilians when you're firing rockets into Lebanon.
Our rules of engagements are very, very strict. We are allowed to shoot only at enemy combatants that are trying or shot at us.
Meanwhile, the United States remaining committed to a diplomatic solution.
That's what we're working tirelessly to achieve. Full-scale war is not in anyone's interest.
As the strikes increase and Israel weighs its next move, a ground invasion of Lebanon looking more likely. This would mark a serious escalation, increasing chances of a wider conflict. But it's a move IDF Brigadier General Amir Avivi tells us he supports.
You think that Israel needs to make the first move when it comes to an offensive up in the north?
It's crucial who does the first move. Another 7th of October is not an option. We cannot have our enemies again proactive and starting wars first. We need to be proactive and attack.
And Hezbollah started firing into Israel on October 8th, the day after the October 7th attack. They said they were doing so in solidarity with Hamas. And since then, tens of thousands of residents on both sides of the border have been displaced from their homes. And Amira, that number is only growing as this conflict worsens.
And Kayla, U.S. diplomats are getting involved now. What are they working on at this point?
So the U.S. is working to broker a short-term ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah, hoping this will help prevent a full-blown war between the two that could turn into a wider regional conflict, which no one wants to see. Today, the United States has also imposed sanctions on about a dozen businesses and ships that transport Iranian oil and petroleum and gas. Now, Iran relies heavily on the sales of these to fund proxy militant groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Amira.
Kayla Gaskins, thank you. And we have a live look now over Jacksonville, Florida, where a former Jacksonville Sheriff's officer is under arrest for felony false imprisonment and a misdemeanor battery. Reginald McKinney, accused of pulling over a female driver earlier this month, then making inappropriate physical contact with the woman after threatening to take her to jail. McKinney resigned upon arrest, but this isn't new to the Sheriff's Department. 14 members of the agency have been arrested this year.
I'll enter does he want to enter a plea at this time?
Your Honor, he would enter a plea of not guilty and request a date for preliminary hearing.
A Kentucky sheriff accused of shooting and killing a judge in his chambers last week has pleaded not guilty. Sean Mickey Steins is charged with murdering Letcher County District Judge Kevin Mullins. Authorities are still trying to determine a motive, but we do know Steins is facing a lawsuit. He's currently in jail without bond. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday. Coming up, the conclusion of a bipartisan Senate report on the Secret Service's handling of the first assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. Then the number of former pro football players who believe they have a degenerative brain disease that can't be diagnosed until death. And later, why an alarming number of Asian Americans don't feel safe in their home city of Seattle. We'll be right back. The failures of the Secret Service the day former President Donald Trump got shot were foreseeable and preventable. That's according to a bipartisan Senate investigation released today, which closely reflects what the agency's own investigation has found. Lawmakers found multiple failures leading up to the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, from planning and communications to security and allocation of resources. Some lawmakers tonight say giving the agency more money is not the solution.
You don't fix human failures by giving the humans more money. You fix human failures by getting new humans to do the job. So the people who've been making these mistakes have to be replaced, and there has to be a new set of people coming on board.
In a statement, the Secret Service says it's already implemented fixes to these issues and is working transparently with Congress. The agency last week said it would be holding people accountable, but declined to identify the individuals, their roles, and their punishments. Today, officials and lawmakers said Iran is clearly trying to assassinate Trump and members of both his and Biden's administrations. A National Security Council spokesperson said the threat against Trump stems from a desire for revenge for the killing of Iranian General Soleimani. Trump acknowledged the risk in an X post today, while also thanking Congress for approving more money for the Secret Service. And a live look at the Senate floor right now, where senators are soon going to debate the government funding legislation that was passed out of the House of Representatives earlier today. The measure will only fund agencies at current levels through December 20th, but would keep federal agencies open as the new fiscal year starts next Tuesday. There's also an additional $231 million included for the Secret Service. A final vote expected later this evening. Eggs are getting very expensive again. Prices increased by over 28% from August of 2023 to this past August. The main reason is that bird flu is cutting into egg production. A dozen eggs cost $3.20 on average, which is nearly twice as much as before the COVID-19 pandemic. Wholesale prices have started falling, though, so that should eventually help consumers. In less than a week, 45,000 dock workers could walk off of the 36 separate ports from Maine to Texas. The International Longshoremen's Association union demanding better pay and benefits before their contract expires on September 30th. In preparation, some shipping companies have begun relocating goods to the West Coast. Others are flying goods in. Both could lead to delays in the supply chain and inflation right before the election, even without a work stoppage. Some experts say even a 2-week strike could create a bottleneck on some goods until at least early 2025. The Republican and Democratic presidential candidates are both campaigning on the economy today. Vice President Kamala Harris, she gave a speech in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, expanding on her policy vision. She also contrasted her approach with that of former President Donald Trump's.
I intend to chart a new way forward and grow America's middle class. Donald Trump intends to take America backward.
Trump delivered remarks in Mint Hill, North Carolina, a key state for both sides in this year's race. He promised to bolster American manufacturing jobs through strategic tax cuts and tariffs. Trump also criticized Harris's handling of the economy.
Kamala goes to work every day in the White House. Families are suffering now. So if she has a plan, she should stop grandstanding and do it. Just do it. You have a few months left. Do it. Do it.
And roughly a third of former professional football players, 34%, believe that they have chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, the degenerative brain disease thought to be caused by concussions and repeated hits to the head. The research was published this week in JAMA Neurology. More than 230 former players now say that they've had suicidal thoughts, and more than 175 say they've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And in your health alert, we are taking a deep dive into a new kind of shock wave therapy that can help zap pain away. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains how it works.
Hey there, everybody. It is a therapy known as Shockwave tissue regeneration, and it appears to work under your skin in a whole new way. Even if you've tried other therapies, those who've had it say this one works.
For the last couple of years, I've been sidelined with hip pain.
Adrian Custer recently chose to have this treatment at Ohio's Wave Physical Therapy and Pilates.
Is that painful? Yeah.
It was getting hard, she says, to stand up.
And I actually felt like I was stuck sometimes in the sitting position. I would really have a hard time getting up at all.
Physical therapist Sarah Crawford performs this therapy.
We apply shockwaves to a targeted tissue, and it helps stimulate your own natural healing process.
As this animation provided by Shockwave shows, the waves trigger that response by working against inflammation and drawing new cells to the area in pain.
It just does what our body naturally would do in the best case scenario.
A recent NIH study shows the therapy, which feels like a rubber band I discovered on your hand, shows it's effective in pain relief and wound healing. But it works best when combined with other movement treatments such as physical therapy and Pilates.
Yeah, the data supports 86% benefit at long-term follow-up of 12 months.
Well, it's not a miracle cure. Sarah says it's now in research for other therapies, which are helped by improved blood supply.
FDA approved to treat plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendinopathy, but the American Academy of Urologists just met earlier this year to write a statement on Shockwave being primary line of treatment for erectile dysfunction.
As for Adrian, she says she can now get up pain-free.
It was probably by the fourth session I really started to notice a big difference on a daily basis.
Physical therapy covered by your medical insurance plans in most cases, but this therapy in some cases self-pay. That can be about $100 a session. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Liz, thank you. Coming up, the action one state is taking in response to poor reading and literacy skills across the country. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin with a new program in Ohio called Science of Reading to help improve students' lagging literacy skills.
These kindergarten students at Portsmouth Elementary are learning word sounds with the goal of making them better readers when they get older. Teacher Stacy Reed has a Project Bear member from Shawnee State to help develop reading skills.
You have a way better student to staff ratio because they help in that manner. And we all know with smaller groups, kids pay more attention, they focus, and you can get more skills taught and reinforced daily.
Every teacher in the state really has to be retaught how to teach based upon the science of reading.
Ohio Governor Mike DeWine called for the program in schools a couple of years ago in his State of the State speech. He says school districts are embracing the program. The legislature allocated $171 million to implement the program to pay for reading materials, professional development, and reading coaches.
Frustrated Sylacauga residents seeking answers for the rise of immigrants in their community walked away from Tuesday night's town hall with little information.
It is a struggle to find answers, and I think everyone wants answers, but the problem is we don't have anything definitive that we know.
State representatives in attendance were not able to answer any questions about the number or nationality of immigrants in the area because that data does not exist.
We're talking about over 500,000 legal immigrants that we're having to deal with now.
Representatives Ben Robbins, Lance Bell, and Keith Kelly say the rise in immigration comes from the country's humanitarian parole program.
New statistics bring into focus a public safety crisis involving Asian Americans who live in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties.
What's striking is that there are ongoing concerns around safety within our community.
Commissioned by the Asian American Foundation, out of 1,000 residents, 30% say in the past 12 months they've been called names or assaulted. 24% say they've been harassed, and 20% physically attacked.
Walking down the streets of Seattle, I get called names sometimes, or I get funny stares.
A lot of residents post-pandemic may think that anti-Asian hate is waning, and what we're seeing is that our community is continuing to feel unsafe.
There is a $26,000 gold prize hiding in the woods of the Northeast, and if you pay to play, then it could be yours. The statue is in fact gold, by the way, 10 troy ounces, part of a large treasure hunt and human experiment of sorts called Project Skydrop, developed by 2 New Hampshire video game designers. The real-life game started last week, and anyone who puts in $20 gets clues that can help locate the trophy within a 500-mile radius. Whoever wins also gets 50% of the pot of registration fees, so not a bad deal. The creators say it's all about taking the adventure from the screen to the outdoors. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Thank you so much for joining us.